Welcome back to the garage here at Basin Motorsports. I'm Canaan. Today I'm going to show you how to change the pressure switch on your Campbell Hausfeld or your Husky brand Oilless air compressor. Alright, so obviously this is going to be the star of the show, so I'm going to make it the center of attention. Once we get into our compressor itself, you're going to have your top cover that needs to come off. There are going to be two screws. There's one on the back, one on the front. They use a Phillips bit, and once you take those screws out, you'll have to go around the perimeter and pop loose these little clips. Now they just pop out, so you can use a flathead screwdriver or something simple. You'll notice that then it's going to be trapped in here underneath your outlet nipple there on the front. So you're going to pop this up, come around the nipple, and you're going to take your cover off. Now this is going to expose your pressure switch, which is here amongst all the fun. Now this is the new one that comes in the box. So obviously you're going to have an output nipple here with a regulator and a gauge. On the side over here, you're going to have a gauge for the tank. On the bottom, there is going to be the tank outlet here to the regulator gauge, or to the gauge here, to pressure switch. You'll have a release on top, and then you're going to have an air line here that comes in. Now on the back side here, you're going to have 4 wires that come in. 2 are going to be the ins, 2 are the outs, and the connections. So we'll want to make sure that we either write down the color and the gauge of them, or just take a picture with your phone that you probably have in your pocket. Now in order to take this apart, we're going to take our wire connections off first. In order to take this out, we need to take off all the accessories. So this gauge needs to come off, this outlet here needs to come off, and this hose needs to come off, plus the wiring. We are going to have to spin this counterclockwise to take it off of the outlet pipe coming out of your main tank. And in order to do that, we need to have clearance to our motor. So that's why we're taking off all the accessories. Now with this, taking these off, the simple part is just to use a wrench of the correct size. And just remember that this is kind of suspended in air because it's off of a pipe. So as we turn, let's say we turn this counterclockwise to release it, we want to make sure that we give it some support with our hand as we break these loose. That way we don't apply too much pressure and break off our pipe coming from our tank underneath. So now I'm just going to go ahead and stop filming. I'm going to take a picture of the wiring here so I know how to put back together. And then we'll just go ahead and start taking off each of these pieces. All right, now that we're starting to take off some of our accessories, you can see I do have my wiring off. So 4 connections here. You have your grounding wire, which is your green over here. This top outlet, your bleed off here, is going to be a 9/16 wrench. And these wrenches are going to be a standard size. So 9/16. This gauge is a 7/16 to take off. This airline here is going to be a 7/16. And you're just going to go ahead and twist it just slightly to the left or the right. And it's just going to come out. So you get the plastic fitting to come out there. And that line is going to come out of the way. And this is just going to be another 9/16 to take off our gauge and regulator going out. Now again, we're going to give it some support to make sure that I can twist just the piece I need. Now one thing you notice as you start taking these fittings apart, they're actually going to be a little bit rusty. And rust, honestly, is probably what is going to kill your pressure switch over the long term. A lot of times you get moisture that gets built up in the tank here, and as it comes out to go out to your tank and through your lines, what you find is you're going to have a little bit of condensation build up into your pressure switch here. And even down here where your spring is at, a lot of times you'll either have them where they won't shut off anymore. So if you have it to turn off at 120 PSI, a lot of times it won't do that. It'll go up to almost 150 PSI, which is probably your tank's maximum, and it won't stop. Mine, on the other hand, when I would turn on the power, it would immediately pop the breaker. Just started, but that's the pressure switch. That's what it's supposed to do. So it was pulling too many amps into there, so that's why I'm going ahead and replacing this. So now with this last fitting off here, obviously that's out, that's out, that's out. Now we have the connection on the bottom just to be able to take off our pressure switch. So the last piece here we need to take off is obviously our pressure switch. You can just go ahead and use an adjustable wrench. You notice that there are flats on the outlet side here of our pressure switch. Just use an adjustable wrench there, and you can go ahead and twist. And we're going to twist this, obviously going counterclockwise. Just be careful that it's going to snag on your hose and your wiring, so you want to keep them out of the way. And as you go ahead and take it off, it will slowly but surely come off there. Now there's our pressure switch, our old one coming off, and now it's time to start putting our new one back on. All right, so going back together, it's going to be obviously just the reverse of what you just took off. Now, a lot of people will have a debate on whether they want or what they want to seal their threads with. Some like just a simple Teflon thread tape. Others like something like a pipe thread sealant that it just goes on. It's kind of a goo, if you would call it that. You can put it on. I don't have a preference of either one. I say use what you have. If you don't have either, make a decision on whether you like this. This stuff is vibration resistant, so you could use the goo if you like, or you can just use the tape itself. The goo obviously is going to go on the threads all the way around. The tape itself, you're going to go ahead and put it on. Now remember, as you put on tape, if you're looking into the end, you want it to go clockwise around. So as you put your piece on and twist it, you want to make sure that thread tape is getting tighter and tighter. So if it's going clockwise this way, as I'm tightening my piece, it's actually stretching the tape with it. So that is the positive side of what you want to do. Now I'm going to go ahead and use tape, so I'm going to put some tape on here. Then I can put my piece back on, and then we can go ahead and start reassembling all the accessories to go with it. All right, so here is the thread tape on. One thing I just want to note to make sure you remember this, don't cover any part of the hole. You want to make sure you're not blocking it with tape, because once you seal it down, that tape can become an obstruction. So just make sure that our tape is not on the lip or blocking the hole. Now I can just go ahead and put my switch on and then start putting my accessories back together the same way. And I want to note this now that I'm going to go ahead and reuse this fitting. It does come with a new one, and because mine appears to be okay, it's a kind of a one-way fitting, so it's not easy to come off without cutting the hose here and reconnecting it there. I'm going to try the old one just to see if it works. If there's no problem with it, hey, look at me, I've already saved a little bit on this fitting. If it needs to work or if it needs to be changed, I'll just go ahead and cut this fitting and put the new one on. Now that we have everything back together, one thing I'll note is just go ahead and make sure you clean off all your threads before you put your thread tape or your thread compound on there. Make sure you just clean them up, some sandpaper or whatever you need to do. That way you're good. Go ahead and put your wiring back together, all your ground, your hose here, and now we need to test it. Now, one thing I've read online is that these are not set to what you want. So on the instructions here, if I show you, there's a little diagram right here. It's all about cut off and cut in. So cut off is the maximum pressure you want it to run, which, you know, if it's 120 PSI, that is your turn off. Basically, when you want it to stop building pressure. Now, as you bleed pressure off, if you're running tools or anything else, there's going to be a cut in. Now, your cut in is where you want that compressor to kick back on. A lot of times that could be 90 PSI, 50 PSI, whatever it's going to be. On the back, you're going to see that there are two different screws on your diagram and also on your switch. So as you build that up, just be ready to adjust those. I'm going to go ahead and set mine. I think I'm going to set it at 120 for my cut off, to where I want it to turn off after building pressure. And I'll probably set it to about 75 for my cut in as an initial test. And then if I need to change it later on, I can. All right, with everything tested now, everything is set with our two screws for cut in and cut out, or our turn off, turn on. The job is done. Now I just need to go ahead and put a cover back on. So again, you're going to put it over your outlet nozzle here. You're going to swing it down in, place it on top, two screws to hold it down, and the job is done. Now, if you have a question on having to replace this motor, I've already done this previously. I'll put a link in the description or have a link up in the corner up here. You can go ahead and replace this. That's really the two major big pieces of this to replace, and you also can replace this outlet tube. Now, hopefully that gets your compressor back running, whether it's the tube, the motor, or the switch. Those are your three big things on the compressor to fix. And a lot of times they're just going to go bad eventually due to condensation or rust, or parts just wear out if you use it a lot. Now, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them down in the comment section below. I'll put a link down in the description of other videos I've done on this. And these parts are getting harder to find because these compressors are starting to get to be 15 to 20 years old, depending on the model. So do some research. eReplacements.com is a pretty good source. I found this switch on Amazon of all places. So just find the manufacturer part number, easiest way to do it. I then throw it into Google and see what comes up. A lot of times Amazon has it. A lot of times eReplacements.com has it. There are plenty of sites out there. Just do your research. Find what you need. Ask the questions if you're not sure. Retailers are pretty good about getting back to you and helping you get the right switch. Any questions else that I can do for you, leave them down in the comments. Otherwise, get out there and fix that compressor and get back to work. We'll see you next time.